The Battle of Kashyyyk was one of the largest and most important battles of the Clone Wars, fought over the homeworld of the Wookiees. It commanded the attention of military figures as important as Yoda and General Grievous, and it would have had the potential to change the course of the entire war if it wasn't right at the end of it. But despite the extreme importance and eventual scale of this battle, it started off pretty small. Just 4 clone commandos kicked off the Battle of Kashyyyk, and in this video, we're going to be telling the story of how.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Let's start by introducing our heroes, the commandos of Delta Squad. The team was led by Delta 38, nicknamed Boss, and included the demolitions expert Delta 62, the slicer Delta 40, and the sniper Delta 07, nicknamed Scorch, Fixer, and Sev respectively. These guys were the best of the best, some of the top clones of the Republic Special Operations Brigade, having served from Geonosis up until the war's final year without a single casualty. They were who the Republic called in for truly important commando missions. In one such mission, a year into the Clone Wars, Delta Squad discovered that the Trandoshans, the Wookiees' planetary neighbors, had made an alliance with the Confederacy of Independent Systems. This revelation was a part of what led Kashyyyk to formally declare support for the Republic, and it also led to greater Republic scrutiny of Trandoshan activities. As a result, in 19 BBY, as the Outer Rim sieges kicked into high gear, Republic intelligence discovered that Trandoshan slavers had begun moving against the Wookiees in Kashyyyk's jungles. The slavers had become bolder than they'd been in centuries, coming close to the Wookiee city of Kachiro and daring to kidnap a powerful Wookiee chieftain, Tarful. The Republic feared there was more to this than it seemed and suspected separatist involvement. Thus, Delta Squad was dispatched to investigate. Delta Squad was tasked with infiltrating the camp where Tarful was being held and freeing the Wookiee leader. They landed on the forest floor near Kachiro, where the Shadowlands weren't nearly as dangerous as they were elsewhere on the planet, and infiltrated the camp without much difficulty. But as the commandos fought their way through Trandoshan mercs and slavers, their advisor in orbit detected an unidentified craft coming in for a landing at the slaver base. Boss was able to get a visual on the craft, and the advisor recognized the ship immediately. It was the Soulless One, General Grievous's ship. Now certain the Trandoshans' operations were far more than just their usual slaver hijinks, the commandos fought their way to the camp's detention center and rescued Tarful and a few other Wookiees. But they weren't allowed to leave the slaver base just yet, as their advisor wanted them to scope out the pad where the Soulless One had landed. The commandos complied, and they got visual confirmation that it was indeed General Grievous who was paying the Trandoshans a visit. Delta Squad raced down to the landing pad, but they were unable to stop the CIS Supreme Commander from taking off again. At length, they defeated the Magna Guards Grievous had left them as a parting gift, with difficulty, and managed to get Tarful out of the base. But this wasn't the end of their mission. The revelation that Grievous was involved with the Trandoshans opened up a whole new can of worms, and Delta Squad was about to dive right in. Boss and the gang moved on to another Trandoshan compound nearby, one that was considerably larger. Once they got inside the compound, however, it became clear that the base was more than it appeared to be. After breaching the perimeter, Delta Squad encountered battle droids guarding the compound, and Fixer and Scorch noted that the whole base seemed to be full of separatist supply crates. As the commandos started to encounter droidekas, spider droids, and other elite separatist units, they concluded that this wasn't a slaver base at all. It was a full-blown separatist staging area. Delta Squad blew up the base's supply caches and landing pads to neutralize it for the time being, but by that point, it had become apparent that the Confederacy was planning a full-blown invasion of Kashyyyk. After the supply base was neutralized, a gunship picked up the commandos and shuttled them off to Kachiro, where the real battle was about to begin. As Delta Squad touched down in the city of Kachiro, the Confederacy had already begun landing an invasion force on the far side of the city. In a surprise attack, several warships had slipped past Wookiee defenses and deployed right before Kachiro could muster up an effective counter. By the time the Wookiees were able to rally, half of Kachiro had fallen to the droids and Trandoshan raiders were pouring into the other half. The Wookiees were spread thin, but there was still hope to push the Confederacy back. The two halves of Kachiro were linked by a single bridge, and if that bridge were to be severed, it would be enough to stop the separatist advance, at least for a time. Delta Squad was sent out to do the job. Delta Squad cut through the Wookiees' side of Kachiro, battling Trandoshans as they went and easing up the pressure on the city's defenders. Quick thinking on the part of boss Scorch 7 Fixer sealed up the several breaches in Kashyyy's defenses that the Trandoshans were using as entrances. By the time Delta Squad reached the center span, their Wookiee allies were well on their way to securing their side of the city. When the commandos arrived at the bridge, the droid army was in the middle of paving the way for a bigger assault force, and the commandos had to fight through swarms of battle droids to secure the bridge. Their problems multiplied when the charge they planted on the bridge misfired, forcing them to find a rocket launcher and do things the old-fashioned way. Despite these hiccups, however, Delta Squad successfully destroyed the bridge. The Separatist and Wookiee sides of Kashyyyk had been cut off from each other, and our brave commandos were on the Separatist side. But they weren't alone. Tarful and a number of Wookiees had been cut off from the Separatist side of Kashyyyk as well, and now Delta Squad was tasked with helping them mount an effective resistance. Using maintenance tunnels to get around the droids' major staging areas, Delta Squad managed to find Tarful and several of his Wookiees, and together they began to take back the far side of Kashyyyk. As Wookiee resistance fighters joined them at every turn, the commandos made for a pair of munitions dumps where the Wookiees hoped to arm up. The droids planted charges on the munitions crates, but Delta Squad arrived in time to disarm the bombs and save the ammo. As the commandos fought across Kashyyyk, they encountered even more of the Confederacy's elite units. Advanced spider droids, droidicas and magna guards were all deployed to stop the Wookiees' advance, and the Seps even deployed Geonosian elites to stop Delta Squad from saving the munitions base. As Sev noted, this was a lot more than the Confederacy would deploy for a smaller operation, an indication that they were serious about taking Kashyyyk. Despite this fierce resistance, Delta Squad managed to link Tarful up with the rest of his Wookiee warriors and arm the lot of them, allowing the fearsome chieftain to advance the reconquest of Kashyyyk. As Tarful got set up in Kashyyy's war room, Delta Squad pushed higher into the city, climbing up through the Roshir tree that contained the Seps staging area. A Commerce Guild destroyer was docked at the top of this tree, and if Kashyyyk was to be retaken, it had to be destroyed. That part of the city had defensive turrets capable of doing the job, but they were inoperable at the time as the destroyer had hooked up into Kashyyy's power grid and prevented the turrets from coming online. Tarful informed Delta Squad that there were backup generators which could provide power to the turrets, however. The commandos advanced up through the tree, clearing out hangars and Roshir nurseries alike and meeting heavy resistance the whole way up. Delta Squad was able to power up 2 backup generators, allowing Kashyyy's defensive grid to come online. All that was needed was a team to actually man those turrets, and naturally, Delta Squad was chosen for the job. The clone commandos had to fight through so many droids on the way up that Sev ended up losing count of his kills, a first in his 3 years of frontline service. After battling a full army's worth of battle droids, Trandoshans and Geonosians, Delta Squad finally made it up to the highest levels of Kashyyyk, where members of the squad started peeling off. Sev was tasked with manning the first turret the commandos encountered, while Fixer took the second, Scorch took the third, and Boss took the fourth and last. With the Separatist destroyer in range, the commandos opened fire, pummeling the warship with rockets. The ship's shields buckled, and after a sustained bombardment, its skeletal frame gave way. The destroyer exploded, blunting the Confederacy's assault on Kashyyyk and allowing the Wookiees to liberate Kashyyyk. Delta Squad had finally completed their mission. There was no time for celebration, however. Even as the smoke from the destroyer's destruction cleared, Sev was ambushed by multiple hostiles, and his comm signal was lost. Fixer and Scorch regrouped with Boss and prepared to go after their missing brother, only for command to order them to evacuate from Kashyyyk immediately. Reluctantly, the commandos were forced to abandon their brother. It was only as a gunship carried them away from Kashyyyk that Delta Squad learned why they had been recalled. The Confederacy wasn't ready to abandon its assault on Kashyyyk quite yet, and the fight was about to be joined. As the commandos learned, their mission itself had been cover for a full-scale Republic invasion of Kashyyyk. As Delta Squad's gunship took them above the tree line, dozens of Republic assault ships descended on Kashyyyk, disgorging landing craft and swarms of starfighters. As the stunned commandos watched the invasion unfold, Grandmaster Yoda sent out a message to all incoming Republic forces, ordering them to head to Kashyyyk and rendezvous with Delta Squad. The Battle of Kashyyyk had begun. So, that's how 4 clone commandos kick-started the Battle of Kashyyyk. But what do you think? Would you like to hear more about the misadventures of Delta Squad? Feel free to let us know that and much more in the comment section below. And just before you click off to the next suggested video, guys, I have a massive announcement to make. Our revitalized Geetsly's gaming network is now up and running. It's running on a beautiful map. The staff team have worked really hard on it, and I'm glad to have put my full trust into them. So make sure you guys check that out. All the necessary information for that is in the description below. And if you want to check out our all new history channel, The Braved, where we take a look at all the badasses of history, that's in the description too, as well as our Relax Jack music channel, our Geetsly's Discord, and our Patreon. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.